Thank you so much for showing up, for being here. Last year was a crazy and amazing experience for Anna and me to be at the UN Climate Change Conference in Glasgow, Scotland. Very wild days, very deeply touching. And this year was a strong process for us to decide that we are not going to be personally present at COP27. And for me personally, it came from the situation that my father is in an end-of-life phase. And he's also turning 85 on the 14th of November in the middle of this conference. And I decided, going deep into my heart, and I think this is one of the questions that we will be looking at with a world that's on fire. How do we make time for the preciousness of this kind of situations? Parents dying, neighbors needing our help, children being born. How does everything that is precious fit into our lives? So Anna and I won't be there, but our wonderful colleague who is a close-knit member of our Pocket Project team, Sonita Mbah, will be in Egypt, and many other friends, close friends of ours. So we'll be hearing live updates from COP every day. And we have a wonderful program prepared for you. We'll share more at the end of today's call about the details. We have one or two surprises still up our sleeves, but I want to just start maybe growing from what I just shared also, this quote by E.B. White. Every morning I awake torn between a desire to save the world and an inclination to savor it. Every morning I awake torn between a desire to save the world and an inclination to savor it. This makes it hard to plan the day, but if we forget to savor the world, what possible reason do we have for saving it? In a way, the savoring must come first. Yeah, and I feel that's also really a part of what we will continuously come back to, this taking time to savor, taking time to savor our own bodies, the closest piece of nature that we have, taking time to savor each other, taking time to savor the beauty of the world around us, and taking time to savor the power of our emotions as we watch a world that is in danger. Yeah, and this is a time where I believe it feels vulnerable to all of us to be alive. And at least in me, the reality of this has grown over the past year, that the vulnerability of being alive, the reality that systems are collapsing around us, has come home much more deeply to my system. Yeah, more voices are acknowledging that we have not been able to put in place the action needed to meet the reality of human-made climate change. We are not implementing the climate agreements that are made at the UN climate conferences. Temperatures are rising, species are vanishing, the Arctic poles are melting. You will see that during our times here, we will continuously use photographs of She calls herself bipolar photographer. She travels to the Arctic and the Antarctic to photograph the disappearing ice on our poles. Camille Seaman. And we just want to take a moment to honor you, Camille, your work, and also the generosity with which you're sharing your images to this event. And in a way, Camille really brings present exactly this close knit between the hunger to save and the heartfulness of savoring. Yeah, so the Arctic poles are melting and the floods and the typhoons are increasing. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres just spoke just before the opening of this year's UN Climate Change Conference, saying that our planet is sending a distress signal. And the latest UN report states that the last 8 years have been the hottest on record. Point. Yeah, so we are here in this deep knowledge and this deep acknowledgement of our deep vulnerability. Please remember that you can always switch from speaker view to gallery view, and we really invite you to do that. So whenever you wish to see the screen as a whole and see our beautiful community, please shift. Yeah, and in this place, we also know that though we all feel these ripples of vulnerability deep inside of us, the levels of vulnerability are not the same for everyone. Some of us feel this general feeling of vulnerability, and we're facing a war in Ukraine or in Cameroon. We're facing the uprisings in Iran. We're facing the immediacy of threat to our lives because we live on the front lines of the climate crisis. Maybe we're facing the daily threat of racism in our environments. Or we're facing a fatal disease. There are many reasons why some of us are facing a heightened level of existential insecurity and threat, while others in our community might have a moment of more resourcing available. And this is also why we come together to build a network of global solidarity with those of us who have availability, who can decide to turn our eyes and our ears and our hearts towards those places that currently need to be seen. And this is a shift that we're doing also from last year, where we'll have voices from the front lines of the climate crisis speak to us. Tonight we'll have Sarah Queblatin from the Philippines, where a big typhoon has just hit with us, sharing. And tomorrow we will go deeper into that. And we will also be translating this whole event to Ukrainian, so that it becomes part of our Ukraine support project that the Pocket Project is running in parallel, where we now have teams of 80 volunteers, 43 Ukrainian psychologists and therapists, 41 English and German coaches, therapists, psychologists, all offering support for free to people who are in need in Ukraine as Ukrainian refugees or supporting Ukrainian refugees. So, yeah, and we're in partnership with the Ministry of Environment in Ukraine to share this into Ukraine. Yeah. Yeah, so we know that we're here because we all want to go deeper inside ourselves. We want to find a deeper presence for our care and love in the world. We know that moving faster will not solve the situation and that we wish to move deeper. And we know that we need each other to be able to do this. So that we provide spaces for whoever is resourced enough, materially, emotionally, culturally, spiritually, to turn the witnessing presence of our being, of our hearts towards each other, and allow the world to inform us deeply so that we can find the next steps in our lives that grow from that place of being informed. And together we aim to grow the social tissue of global healing between us. So thank you for joining us. And we would like to start with a short attunement together, just to deepen into the social tissue of being here together. I invite you to relax your eyes, shift to gallery view, turn on your video, because none of us are here alone. And just before we close our eyes or relax our eyes more deeply, just take a moment to take in the screen of beautiful faces, behind which we can feel beautiful beings and hearts and souls and presence that goes back hundreds of thousands of years into lines of ancestry. Bodies that are deeply interwoven with places and land and nature. And thank you for the fullness and the mystery of what comes together here. And with that, let's just close our eyes and take a moment to feel this energy of being together, allowing this topic, climate change, the climate crisis, climate collapse, to touch us. And notice how your body responds. Your body, which, as Thomas Hugel says, is not on the planet, but is actually in the planet, part of the planet. We are living, moving planets. And just take a moment to connect even more deeply to this planet, piece of planet that you inhabit and call your body. And allow gravity to call you in to Mother Earth. Allowing your roots, your groundedness to grow through the soles of your feet, the sit bones, your hips, your thighs. Feel the weight of who you are. The vessel of who you are. beautiful space that your body creates for you. Just allow the streaming flow of energy through your body to become more aware to you. Energy constantly grounding through your body, through the soles and your feet into the planet. Energy sometimes becoming frightened and contracting and lifting out. And then realizing again that there is safety here right now, and breathing out and grounding and allowing the flow through your soles, the soles of your feet, even more fully into the planet. And we honor our emotions at this time. These emotions that we so often suppress in our daily lives to function. Emotions that we think are very personal, but actually they belong to us. They are ours as a species. They live between us. They live in the spaces between us. Our grief for the world. Our grief for the people dying in climate disasters, in human-made disasters, in wars. Our grief for animals, for plants, for the oceans, for the forests. Our fear for the future. Our anger, the power to say no to the transgression of sacred law. Our fury that says yes to the protection of life. Our shame and our guilt for not being able to do more. And our love, our love for ourselves, for each other, for all that is alive. A love for the sacred, for the planet. And also owning the numbness, where all this becomes too much for us. The intensity is overwhelming. And sometimes we need to numb out. And trusting that together, each of us and we as a group will find the balance between moments of intensity, of emotionality, and moments of acknowledging our need for relaxation, other forms of resourcing, before we can come back, connect, relate, be with. And let's invite in our higher intention for being here today, each of us. Something brought us here. Let's take a moment to connect to that part of us. Some of us, it might be our soul or our higher self, might be purpose living in us, our inner motivation, our compass. That's just presence, higher intention flowing through us, bringing us here now. And with that, we'll take a moment in our own tempo and speed to come back to our shared space, to open our eyes. And just take a moment to witness each other. And you might start just by looking at one screen, one person. And while staying present with yourself, becoming more present with them and taking a moment to welcome them into our group body. Yeah, and then you might move on to a next person. Oh, and just welcome them into our group body. And maybe a third person. Just noticing the quality of attention and presence. The quality of openness that is here between us now. Thank you. Yeah. Yeah, and this is really our resource. You know, we all know that what is happening is too intense for any one of us to bear. And by coming together, by really weaving that web between our bodies, our nervous systems, we grow our vessel and we can encompass more together. So what we're going to do now is we're going to open a panel. So I'm going to invite two wonderful people to join me here. And I just want to introduce them first, because I know from own experience that it can just feel very embarrassing to be introduced and have your bio introduced while you're on the screen. So I'm just going to introduce them first, but I also briefly want to say what we'll do after that. So we're going to have a short panel conversation, warm up the space, and then we're going to hear from you, mainly in the chat, maybe one or two voices here, just about what is alive in you right now. You know, what are you joining us with? What is your intention for being here? Yeah, and then we'll go into a short slideshow where we'll presence 6 young women from 5 continents, speaking from communities on the front lines. And then we'll hear from one of those women. And then again, we'll open a space for you all to share in the chat. And possibly also here. Yeah, and with that, we'll continuously create also spaces for interaction in these spaces. And we'll, in the future, we might also have small dyads meeting or triads meeting, but this is our flow for today. And we'll have a completion at the end. Good. So firstly, I want to welcome Sonita Mbah, who is combining her role as member of the team in the Pocket Project with a role that she carries for the Global Eco-Village Network of Africa, with a deep-hearted home role that she has in her communities in Cameroon, where she has lost a lot. An eco-village that she has built, networks of young people that she has been working with due to the civil war that broke out in Cameroon. And so now she's combining her work with the Pocket Project with a master's in World Heritage Studies, where she's about to start into the thesis. And Sonita is a passionate food grower, a permaculture designer, and a wonderful trainer. And she also received a Gender Just Climate Solutions Award at one of the UN climate change conferences a few years ago from the Women and Gender constituency for her work, working with women in Cameroon to transform the cooking stoves that they're using, their use of wood. And yeah, Sonita is also becoming more and more passionate about the healing of the collective trauma of colonialism. So I want to welcome Sonita here with us. And Sonita will also be accompanying us throughout this event with updates from COP27 in Egypt. Thank you so much for being with us, Sonita.
Thank you.
And also I want to welcome Matthew Green, who's become a friend. And he's a journalist working to show how an understanding of collective trauma can help solve the climate crisis. After working for years as an international correspondent for the Financial Times and Reuters, covering conflicts in Iraq and Afghanistan, he returned to the UK to write Aftershock, a book about military veterans and their families finding new ways to heal from the psychological scars of war. And since then, Matthew has been focusing on reporting on climate change and is now a global investigations editor at the non-profit climate news service, DSMOG. And we'll share one of his articles with you, the link to that with you later. So welcome, Matthew, and thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. I'm still resonating with the words that you brought into the space and thinking, why weren't you opening COP27 like that? You know, on a sane planet, that would be how all UN climate negotiations begin. And maybe in the future they will. So thank you. I'm still, everything I had in my mind has been kind of washed out of my system by your words.
Oh, thank you, Matthew. Yeah, and I'm so glad that these kind of openings are actually becoming more frequent, even at COP. Yeah. So for me, it's also now, I think it's now the 13th COP, and it's in all these years, I think there were 2 years that I didn't attend. So this is the second year. And one of those was because of COVID, COP not taking place. Yeah, so I wanted to start, and actually, Matthew, I wanted to start asking you about your hopes and despair at the moment in the face of climate change, the climate crisis in the world. And maybe specifically as COP27 starts, but, you know, just for you to share briefly about that.
Well, there's no shortage of despair. I'm very conscious that living in southwestern London, I'm in a pretty protected position relative to many people, and perhaps many people on this call. And yet I'll never forget this summer, the day when the temperatures went over 40 degrees in the UK, and the door was swelling off its hinges on our flat, and the paving stones were crackling. And it was just a surreal moment. Wildfires breaking out on the nearby golf course. It was like being in a disaster movie. And life paused on that day, and then it seemed to go back to normal. And in a way, that sudden return to normal, as if what had happened hadn't been a huge trauma for the whole country, was almost more traumatic. The rush into our chaotic, dysfunctional politics, the focus on celebrity, distractions, there just isn't a mechanism that we have to acknowledge what is happening to us. And that is why coming into a space like this, seeing people appearing from all over the world, is so moving. It's a moment where wherever we are in relation to this crisis, we're acknowledging our shared, as you say, vulnerability. And that is such a gift that this work is bringing. Now, I've been a very conventional journalist for many years, and I always was very concerned about climate change, but it wasn't my focus. But I suppose what my hope is that this kind of work that you just embodied and that we're all now at this moment engaged in is something, it's very old. It's very old. It's something many of our cultures have forgotten. But the way we're able to do it now, online, around the world, is new. And if we can acknowledge that the climate crisis is a trauma symptom of something much deeper, of hundreds, even thousands of years of trauma accumulating, that I know Sonita will speak about much more eloquently than me. If we can acknowledge that that is actually what the root of the problem is, that opens up a new possibility, because we have the tools now. We can come together. We know how to relate to one another in ways that can create the safety that we need to allow the feelings that wanted to come out of me as you were talking, were trembling in me, are ready to come out. And we can do this together now. We have these methods. We can strengthen the movements of restoration and regeneration, which are absolutely alive and becoming more intelligent and connected all around the world. And at the same time, we even know that the trauma architecture, these systems that seem so oppressive and dominating and death-inspired, basically, we also know that those systems have human beings within them, and that these human beings may seem very remote from the work we're doing right now, but ultimately there's something in them that will also feel this call. So every time we come together to create a field like this, we are serving that planetary process. And I'm just so I'm so moved to be a part of it, right on the leading edge with you here and everyone on this call right now.
Yeah, thank you, Matthew. And let's just give that a breath to allow your presence to really land with us. Because as you say, I can feel how something is trembling much deeper in you while you speak. Now. It's even intense to continue speaking while we face what we face fully. And it's somehow good to watch a fly also flying. There's a fly flying around your camera now and then, a bit of nature and life beyond us humans. So welcome, fly.
I feel the same about your plants, Kosha. Every
Oh,
time I
yeah.
see them on the
Welcome.
screen, I feel my system relaxes and I feel, wow, like if we
Ah,
all had that many plants, we'd probably solve this crisis, right?
yeah. No, it's true. It's why I have these plants, because they help me regulate when I get stressed. Yeah. Oh, thank you. Yeah, with that, I would love to turn to you, Sonita, and just hear from you, like being who you are with everything that you bring, your ancestry, your love for the world that I've seen like burn in you for all these years. Yeah, what is your hope and your despair at this time?
Well, I'm actually sweating because it's not easy to talk about despair because I am immersed in despair all the time. So I come from a continent, from communities where we know how despair looks like. And I think that my biggest despair probably about climate change is just the possibility of extinction. So I am anyways throughout life faced by several possibilities and existential possibilities for extinction. And this is just one more, and it's actually a very big possibility. And actually to go around the world and to notice that there are still several people who do not acknowledge that climate change actually exists. And to sit in this moment and to feel, carrying this load of a possibility of extinction, and still people think it's nothing. And then I have the question, what does it take? What actually does it take to make people believe that actually we live in times that are very crucial for many, many people across the planet? What will it actually take? What kind of language does it take to communicate that? How can people feel that in themselves? And how can I translate that feeling of coming from colonialism, being in a war situation, not having food to eat, and tons of stuff, and then still to deal with the possibility of extinction. Yeah. And I think, again, from that place where I come from those communities, the only thing that keep us going, that keep me going, is the hope, because we say all the time that without hope, we would not be here. We would not even exist. And that's why in my communities, we dance, we celebrate, we give praises and blessings. Because when we speak these words, we actually speak resilience, because this is where our foundation comes from. And I would say that it is in that space of hope, of celebrating what we can celebrate, the little achievements that we have earned so far in the process of combating climate change. And I can already say that the IPCC report actually naming, the latest report that actually names colonialism as one of the main causes of climate change, is a big step, is something I actually really celebrate. And we have come quite far in the debate around climate change, and to get to that point where we really notice the role that colonialism plays in the climate crisis, and how it leaves lots of communities vulnerable, actually gives me hope.
Yeah, thank you, Sonita. And I salute your courage to speak here to us, coming from the place that you come from. You know, because I know, like, as you say, to speak about despair when you come from a place where you felt despair too close, it takes courage. So thank you. Yeah, and maybe just to a few sentences to complete, Matthew, from you about, you know, how do you describe the connection, or said in other words, what can the climate change movement learn from collective trauma, and especially from collective trauma healing? And you said a few words about that together, but just to deepen that a bit.
Well, I think what Sonita pointed to is so critical, is that this crisis, although in the last 30 years, we've pumped more carbon into the atmosphere than the entire human history up to then, it isn't just 30 years ago that it started. This is the culmination of centuries of injustice, oppression, imperialism, colonialism. Because otherwise, why would we be in the industrialized world? Why we would have been so complacent about this? You know, flip it around. Imagine if climate change actually caused glaciers to advance down across Northern Europe. You could be pretty sure that the response 30 years ago would have been different, I think. So there's an underlying trauma of oppression that's taking place. But also we have to understand that those of us also in the West are living within those trauma-creating systems. The systems live within us as well. And so the first step is to understand that this whole trauma-producing machinery is the issue, is the root, is the cause of the problem. And once we've woken up to that, then we can start figuring out how to respond and dismantle it in a more intelligent, responsive way. On a more practical level, if you will, because that can sound kind of abstract in some ways, although I think it's a really important understanding to integrate. We've learned so much through the work of yourself and Thomas Joubert and many others involved in collective trauma process work, that when we come together intentionally in groups, as we're doing now, we have access to an intelligence that emerges and operates within, through, and between us in remarkable ways. And we see that intelligence working for the cause of individual healing in a group context, whether it's healing our ancestral traumas, the collective traumas. I'm here in Germany in Oberlethe doing another week retreat with Thomas, and I know that we are going to step out of this transformed. These are tools which are not just available for trauma healing. We should be bringing them to really seriously. They should be at COP27 and in government departments, in companies, in the whole realm of sustainability, in activism. There are so many people who are working very diligently to solve, and solve is maybe not the right word, but at least respond to the climate crisis. We in our community can be helping to equip them, as the Pocket Project and others are doing, with these relational skills, with these healing tools that can make activism, change making, and all the huge domain of transformation that needs to occur much more possible and available as we come together in a different way of relating than the kind of relating that got us into this mess. So the path is there now, and we need to find the courage to walk each other along it.
Yeah, beautiful. So with the courage to walk each other along it, Sonita, you know, we are aware that on our calls of the Pocket Project, I would say probably 90%, I don't want to say a number, of us might be coming from the West. You know, these are very flat words, you know, but, and I wonder, how can we walk each other along in a way that feels honoring and respectful? What would you say, Sonita, to us in the West at this time? And I'm sorry to put you a bit on the spot, but
You sure did.
We'll come back to that question. I would love you to say whatever is alive in you right now, but I also want to ask that question again from you. What would you like to see us do, honor, work at, change? What would you like to see?
Yeah, so I think lots of things. And maybe already coming from what Matthew shared about the underlying systems that have been in existence for many, many years now, especially systems around colonialism, so the socioeconomic constructed systems that are causing a lot of oppression and injustices that I think more and more people in the West are starting to have more knowledge about this. But also, where do we source our stories from is the question. And usually there is a repetitive circle. And I think one of the reasons maybe why, and we say that trauma also comes from these repetitive circles. So where do the people in the West source stories from? Is it directly from the communities, or is it from the same radios, journals, and storylines or medias that are anyways perpetrated by the same narrative and exist under the same, the same systems? And I would like to, of course, invite everyone from the West to question where actually do you source your stories, and to actually go back to the communities and the people on the ground, on the forefront of the climate crisis, and to speak with these people. Because actually this is where the learning comes from. And we come also closer, much, much closer to our interbeing. So I think we might have the possibility to go a bit beyond the ordinary. I also do think that over the years there have been lots of stories around inclusion of voices. And voices on the table around climate negotiations, but also including the voices of indigenous communities, voices of women, and needless to say, the voices of young people. Because myself, as a young person, I'm questioning that all the time. And yeah, so when we say the voices and inclusion of voices of indigenous communities, and there has been, in many cases, where negotiations or papers have been submitted to make this even more possible. But for some reason, there's still a disconnect between the capacity of indigenous communities, whether that is scientifically proven or not. And if that capacity has a potential, whatever sort of technical solutions that are created by these communities, whatever kind of solutions that support us to take us in the direction of solving the climate crisis, this is still not yet acknowledged by the same community of people that say, let's bring the voices of these people on the table. And again, to me, I see a disconnect here. So when we bring the voices of the people, but we don't bring all that which the people come with, it also means that we still are not acknowledging that these people have something to offer. And maybe this is something that the people from the West can again take and make and question. There are lots of tools that have supported forests across the world by indigenous people, people from native people, I can also say. And that knowledge is existing and doesn't need necessarily to be scientifically proven by someone. It's already proven by the practice of it over thousands of years, how these communities have taken care of the earth. And this is something that we can go back and learn. Actually, we need to learn how these communities did it. And we need that information to actually upscale our whatever mechanisms we are putting in place to combat climate change. And it's not only about building new technical solutions in the West, but actually taking into consideration those solutions. I mean, I can speak on to next year, but I can say this is in a way a summary. And I can also talk to including the voices of women and those women who are heavily, for example, in my communities, affected by the war. And when the war broke out, the first people that suffer from those circumstances are women, and women are stuck in forests, unable to have access to any sort of quality of life. And how are we ensuring that the voices of these women and the innovative solutions that they are bringing to the table, regardless of all the situations that they are going through in their everyday lives, how is that being taken into consideration in this in the negotiations? Yeah, so we need the voices of all these people. To ensure that we actually have a balanced system and to lessen in a way the grief and the pain in the world.
Yeah, thank you, Sonita. Thank you for your voice here. And maybe we again just take a moment to allow that to sink in. Yeah, so I want to give huge thanks to both of you. You know, it's wonderful to have you here. You know, it's always wonderful to have a voice of a person, a journalist who brings so much heart to your work, Matthew. A gift to have your voice in the world. And Sonita, thank you for your beauty and your strength, your womanhood and your youth here with us today. Thank you both. Yeah. Yeah, and we will have voices. Sonita's voice we will have again and again. We hope that Matthew will join us again later in the program, and we'll have other voices joining us. Right now, we'd like to take a bit of time to hear from you all. And we're going to use the chat for this, to hear about your despair, your hope, what is alive in you right now as you listen to this. What are you joining us with? What is your intention? Just to bring some of your voices present, like Salal, who says, so grateful for this conversation towards relearning our essential relatedness beyond the oppressive systems of colonialism's legacy. So it's nice to see that gratitude is alive. Thank you, Aloka and Catherine and Banda. Subtle activism, yeah, exactly. Yeah, and it's beautiful, Joanne. We have first questions coming up. What do we do about greed and misinformation and believing misinformation? And we'll bring those questions, we'll collect them, we'll come back to them. I feel a sense of empowerment just being with you all. Your words wake me up. The need for compassion for those who are stuck in fear and paralysis. Bert's intention to find the plants he can water, the plants you can water. The need for humility and deep respect. Participating in the transformational power of community, Dee. Wendy Watkins, bringing your heart. And Mitchell, a young adult working in healthcare and transitioning into mental health. Wow, that's strong, Mitchell. Hopeful to be involved in care. Yeah. Yeah, also interesting, Alfred, a sense of overwhelm and happy that this seems fine. Honoring the deep story. Needing the strength to recognize that every small caring act eventually feeds the whole planet. My intention is to hold space and give love and energy towards this global relearning. Courage to walk each other along this path. Yeah, beautiful. And maybe Barb, as you just speak about offering, encouraging people to grieve. And we hear from Mohammed from Sierra Leone. Yeah, so we would like to share with you, I will share with you, we'll do a small, we don't have so much time left, but I would like to share a presentation with you. And then we'll hear from Sarah Queblatin from the Philippines. And we would like to offer a space for each of us now to honor more of what is happening around the planet. And just, coming back to our bodies again after this more verbal sharing. Really taking time and space to feel how words, sentences, presence of young women climate leaders from around the planet, how this lands in us. And we want to honor the 5 continents. We're going to honor Africa twice, just because it's time to honor Africa twice. And because COP is happening in Egypt this year, and I know all my African friends are really proud and happy to have the conversations hosted by Africa. Yeah, but we want to invite you, and please continue writing, and we'll read this and it will inspire our next steps together. So I just want to share my screen with you for a moment. And remember that on your computer, you can shift the screen, you can make this smaller and bigger. Yeah, thank you again, Camille Seaman, for the beautiful photographs. And we are going to visit these young climate leaders with aware bodies and aware hearts. So just allow the following to land in you and watch carefully. How does my body respond? How do my emotions respond? Presencing within you, nourishing within you the social fabric of healing. And part of that nourishment is also acknowledging your edges and the places where overwhelm comes in and you need to numb, where you become tired, but also the places where your heart starts flowing. Yeah, so we welcome Daria Yemets. And all of these are young women that we will meet again during this program that will speak more deeply. Daria from Ukraine, where I used to pick mushrooms as a child. Now there is a mass grave. And Sarah from the Philippines. Maybe what we need now is not more climate ambition, but to be truly climate vulnerable. Speaking for Asia. Sonita Mbah from Africa. When war walks in through the door, climate change action, climate change walks out of the window. Catherine Polka Enders from the sacred lands of California. Where fires are raging more and more. The time to act was years ago. Now we can lessen the effects, but we can't reverse the course. Margarita from Colombia, speaking for Latin America, speaking for her own country after 58 years of civil war in Colombia, for the first time a Ministry of Environment that is actually supporting communities' climate action. In Brazil, we've just had the elections where Lula took the place of Bolsonaro. Landscapes of climate change, violence, and displacement. The political potential to heal in Latin America is now. And Linda Kabaira from Zimbabwe. Women and children are fearful as floods, droughts, and erratic rainfall due to global warming ravage the communities. Yeah, so just take a moment to feel your body and the stretching that we're all doing in our practice of welcoming the world to take place within us, to stretch our hearts and our awareness to span the globe, the planet, the continents, all these places. And we want to welcome Sarah Queblatin, and we'll just get the first taste now because Sarah will be speaking to us tomorrow, but I would like to invite you, Sarah, to come online here with me.
Hi, Kosha. Hi, everyone. Good evening. Good morning. It's 3 a.m. part of the world. And good evening to you, or morning to the Americas. So thank you for having me.
Yeah, and thank you so much, Sarah, for being with us, and just like adding to the vulnerability of the experience you're going through, also the vulnerability of waking up in the middle of your night and bringing the vulnerability of midnight spaces into our space, right? This is also a sacred time in the middle of the night for you and all of Asia that is currently in that place of being in the center of the night. Yeah, so just bringing awareness to that part of the planet that is currently under the moon and the stars. It's arriving here in Scotland. Oh, the moon has just gone up here. Just seeing the moon, yeah. And
Lovely.
maybe you could share with us just a little bit about your experience of the past days and weeks.
Thank you again, Kosha, and the Pocket Project team for having me. It's really meaningful to share now as well because normally I would be at the climate conference and also, recalling our time together last year in Glasgow and the previous years before that as part of the Gen delegation with you and Sonita. So I could feel my body memory, like kind of, thinking about if I were there now, I would have already my badge and I would be there and, preparing for the first day, Monday of, the rush and the feeling of I'm here because this is such an important time to speak for the communities I work with or the planet in general. And for those are still to reintroduce myself, I'm from the Philippines and work with displaced communities in the Philippines, but also part of a global movement like with Gen and the permaculture for refugees, working with internal and external refugees around the world experiencing climate and conflict vulnerability. So this last few weeks and months, I've been really contemplating if I go to COP27 this year. And it's, partly some funding delay that moved around all our projects, but a big part of it is really dealing with my own climate grief. And after, years of going through cycles of supporting communities that are facing like huge devastation, loss and damage, which now will be a main topic at the COP. People are hoping this would be the COP for loss and damages finally, after many climate vulnerable nations are pushing for it. But there's a part of me that I need to step back and also focus on my own personal. I realized after working so long in this movement, I also noticed like what is my own personal calling in all this, and I need to step back so I could resource myself back in contribution. But at the same time, there's a deep calling to prepare our communities ahead. So we're also launching a platform to support mutual aid responders on the ground, so that because we
Sarah?
know that, yes.
Sarah, I'm just hearing that it's quite fast for the interpreters.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah.
Just slow down a little bit and remember all of this is traveling into Ukraine, traveling into German language zones. So
Yeah. Sorry, wonderful to be reminded. And I see Daria here speaking, and thank you so much for translating. Yeah. So so now we're preparing this platform, and using this time to prepare people, because at this time of the year during the COPs, it's often the time when we have the major super typhoons too. And it's always when people from my country are at the COP, that's always what we carry. It's our collective field when we're at the COP. We're like, oh, what typhoon is going to hit us this time, and where we would speak from. And so, to step back from that and to support community kitchens or bikers who bring the last mile donations, or the women who donate breast milk in camps and evacuation centers, or the churches who receive the displaced, when their homes are flooded or gone, really. So that's what we're creating now. We're creating social safety nets ahead, because while I do believe that the climate talks have been progressing, yes, but the numbers don't show us that the number of death tolls or the impact of loss and damages in our part of the world, it doesn't translate that something is happening. Actually, it's actually the reverse. You could see the intensifying impacts, and we can see the frequency of it much faster and also much earlier. And of course, people know this already. And for us, there's a frustration and despair, and also like, where can we find, where can we fill the cracks, and often it's the communities, the people who do it. When the aid doesn't arrive faster, it's the young people who mobilize, all the aid en masse, and it's the mothers who donate breast milk. It's and these are, I guess for us, we're try to create that safety net ahead. And that's, I think, my priority at the moment, and how I'm dealing, the healthy way I'm coping with my climate grief, apart from my own deep personal work too. So yeah, that's what I'm going through these days. And it's still a COP energy, but and also being with you, really, from this deeper place, as you said earlier, the deeper place of understanding this and the roots of this systemic issue, from what Sonita was also saying, colonialism, and to see the witnessing from both global north, south, east, west. So Matthew was also speaking from the experience in the UK, and how it's also terrifying to see that and witness what they're going through. And yeah, I feel so grateful to be able to witness with everyone here. And it's a different kind of conference, and witnessing together. I'm so grateful. I think you're muted, Kosha.
Yeah, thank you for pointing that out. Yeah, and maybe Sarah, if you could just leave Sarah here for a moment. Just bring you back. Yes. Yeah, I would just want to thank you, Sarah, but also invite for a moment of care and love for you, that we allow our hearts. Sarah, you've spoken very, in a way, bravely about the social safety nets, and you've named your climate grief. And that this climate grief is really about the stories that you hear, the stories that you witness of people losing loved ones, of villages losing their harvests, their crops, their lands, their houses, the people they love, year and year again. Let's take a moment to just notice even how deeply are we willing to feel the reality of that. Of a people knowing the season of typhoons is coming again. And people are meeting in Egypt to make agreements and negotiate solutions. And here on the ground, the situation is worsening. Yeah, and let's just send you our love to you, Sarah Quebla team, you know, your bravery, your ongoing climate work with love for your communities, and that you feel the grounding and the warmth and the spaciousness of this space. Yeah, that we are seeing you right now. And we thank you for being here with us. Yeah, we look forward to hearing much more about these social safety networks and the way that communities on the front lines of climate change respond right now from you tomorrow. Thank you, Sarah. Yeah, with that, my dear friends, we are coming to the closing of our call today. And, you know, we can ask ourselves, what is our intention at this time? You know, and I would say, wow, it's like we are here together to build, cultivate, literally allow the social tissue of deep listening, of mutual solidarity and healing to grow and root in us, and to grow and root between us. We are here to become a homeopathic medicine of healing at this time for each and every one of us, and for each other, and beyond us, to bring our hearts and our global social witnessing attention to the world. And, you know, I've been working in this arena for sustainable community development, healing communities for 30 years. And I've seen, I don't know, you know, I've seen a spreading of awareness maybe around solutions, a spreading of the depth that the negotiations are going to. As Sarah said, finally, we hope that this year an actual decision will be made that those countries that are responsible for climate change actually start paying for some of the loss and damage that those countries that are not responsible but are experiencing the heaviest repercussions at the moment are facing on a daily basis. Something that would seem like the basic rules of justice, that this would come through. So we see a deepening of the conversation. But I feel like sometimes what is the main hope for me is the unraveling that I feel in us. I'm not even sure on all levels, but in us here, in our awareness, that we would know what the one solution is. You know, that there is a clarity about the one solution and this needs to be proclaimed. I feel like that is kind of crumbling. It's crumbling in the face of the reality of climate collapse. Yeah, and the reality of systems collapsing at this time. And I think there's something very beautiful in that unraveling of the certainty that we would know the way. There's something that is beautiful about the not knowing. And as Sonita spoke, the real listening, starting to actually really listen to the indigenous voices, those that know how to protect the forests, and also to nature, to the plants, to the animals, and maybe even to our own hearts. Yeah, and I think the other certainty that is growing is that each of us has our unique contribution to make, and that not one contribution is like any other, and that we are here to celebrate each other in our unique contribution. Yeah, with this, I want to, in a way, unveil the beautiful movie that we're going to be sharing with you throughout these next 12 days, which is called Once You Know. I had the honor of watching it yesterday with some friends because I was afraid to watch it alone. I didn't want to watch it alone. So I invite you also. We will be, for everybody who's signed up, you will get access to a page where you can watch this movie, and you can invite your friends to watch it with you, or you can just share the link and they can sign up and they can also invite their friends. It's a fantastic movie about how really the human response to collapse and the fragility of life that we are witnessing. And it's beautiful. It's beautiful. Yeah. Also, we have a gift, which is over the whole program. We're going to be sharing with you all those most beautiful interviews of the Collective Trauma Summit this year that were about climate change. And all of those will be made available to you so that in your own time, you can watch this movie and you can watch these interviews during this program. And tomorrow, we will be spending time with Sarah Queblatine, learning from community safety networks in the face of typhoon and floods. And on Tuesday, a very special invitation to you all to join us for a beautiful conversation with Thomas Hübel about how we can strengthen the global healing movement and listen deep within ourselves to the wind of change. When change becomes an act of generosity. Yeah, thank you, everybody. I'm just going back to gallery view. I want to give huge thanks to Daria. Our Ukrainian interpreter, Olena, was in an area where the electricity stopped working shortly before the call. And without hesitating, Daria, who was meant to share tonight, just said, I'll step in. I'll do the Ukrainian interpretation for us. So thank you, Daria. And thank you, Heike, who did the German translation for us. Thank you, Ben, for tech. Thank you, Anna, for your gracious hosting in the background. Thank you, Matthew and Sonita and Sarah, for your courageous and honest and vulnerable sharing. And thank you, everybody, for being here. We will see you again tomorrow same time, same place, and we will meet us again.
Maybe to add for all of you that once edited, we will share these calls that are recorded on the website, but just stay tuned to the emails that you receive from us. We will again and again share information and links there.
And of course, continue to welcome your friends to join us as well, so that we grow this global healing movement one by one and all together. Be well, sleep well, go soft with yourself, notice your dreams, and see you tomorrow.